when I've had good people, and currently we got a lot of great people, a lot of good staff going on right now with the growth we're currently going through. And when somebody has a job, it's the reason why they have that job and why they're good at it. You just kind of let them do it and not try to micromanage. And that's kind of one thing we've recently tried to do is just let people do their jobs.
Between the Grooves is hosted by James Curtis, music director and morning man in the Greater Toronto Area on Joy Radio, and Aisha Woods, Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, and musician. Together, they talk with artists and industry insiders to discover our connection between music and faith. You can connect with us on Facebook or Twitter at Between Grooves. Now, here's James and Aisha.
So how you been, my friend?
Been doing good.
Doing good.
Can't wait for summer. Can't wait for summer. Tired of this winter already. Oh, no, you don't know what I'm talking about. You don't know what I'm talking about. Not in Orlando, Florida.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you, but I don't know what you're talking about.
I hear you, but I don't understand you. I understand. Yes. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
It's been warm and it's been breezy, like really, really breezy. So, speaking of breeze, have you heard about this fresh wind that's blowing across our nation here?
Yeah.
Some revival breaking out?
Yeah. It's, I suppose, high time, but you can't really put a time limit or a restraint on anything like that. It started at Asbury, a bunch of students getting together, and they just kept having church for days.
And it's still going on, isn't it?
Still going. Well, it has been going on. I heard they kind of disbanded or relocated or something like that. But it's been it's like that flame that spreads because it's been happening in other universities as well, which is really exciting to see and hear about. I think it's great that it's starting with students. It's happening with the young people because I truly believe that that's the best. I just can't imagine. I don't see something like this happening with like a Chris Tomlin or one of Corey Asbury or one of these big artists,
right.
Because that's their livelihood.
Well, it might happen with
could.
Corey Asbury.
Sure, it could, but I'm thinking
Asbury.
Yes.
Come on.
Sorry, I didn't mean to because of his last name, but I think for me it's exciting to see when it happens with students because then it's genuine, right? It's not a show. And a lot of times when it's an artist and that's their livelihood, that's what they do to make money. And you might question if it's genuine or authentic or not. Right. What really disturbs me, though, and I think it's great what's happening, I'm not a big fan of the, fly down and check it out tourist type thing. I think it's great.
Being a spectator.
Yeah. I remember years ago we had something in Toronto called the Toronto Blessing, and it was at a church. It was like a vineyard church at the time, and I think they've since changed their name or whatever. And it's a big thing, and it was known about all across North America. People were flying in to check it out, and like I said, it was right by the airport, Toronto Pearson International Airport. 10 minutes away from my house at the time. We had an apartment, and we were really, really close to where it was. And I'll be honest, I never went. I never went for the main reason why is because I felt that if God is moving, he can move anywhere, right? I don't have to physically go to that church to experience God, right? That was my one thing. But the funniest thing was my parents lived in British Columbia at the time, and they had moved there a number of years earlier. And so my mom flew to Ontario to Toronto to check this, Toronto Blessing out, and she came with a bunch of other people as well. And I was kind of not hired, but I was because I live close to the airport, I was the guy that had to go to the airport and pick these guys up. I was going back and forth with the vehicle with their luggage and everything else. And
you were voluntold.
I was definitely voluntold. And one of the guys, when I picked him up from the airport, didn't know this guy from a hole in the ground, but he says to me something like, "Wow, this is amazing. This is incredible that's happening in Toronto. You must love this. This is," and I kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, "Well, I've never been." And he was shocked. He looked at me and he was shocked. He said, "You've never been? Like, why? It's happening right in your backyard." And I said, "Well," and this is what I explained to him. In Toronto we have the CN Tower. Right. It's a big tourist attraction. Just because we have the the CN Tower, it doesn't mean I go to the CN Tower every week, right?
Right.
It's there. I can go whenever I like.
At Mickey Mouse.
Right.
For at you Disney every week.
Right. Yeah. For you in Orlando, it's there. You can go whenever you want. And,
sure.
And and part of that too is, I don't believe in the time limit. So if something is happening, I can go anytime, right?
Right.
And I don't want to sound callous and say, well, I'll go later. I'm not interested in going. I'll go later. But why can't something like that happen in my own church, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying
can happen in.
I don't need to go there and bring it back, right? And so that's the thing I've seen with Asbury, where all these people seem to, I don't know, they don't have jobs, so they've got time to fly out. Like I'm working every day. I don't know about you, right? So I don't have, unless I've happened to book vacation time around when it's happening, this revival's happening, I can fly out and check it out. But I'm not a fan of the spectator part of things.
Yeah, I hear you. And when it's all said and done, you think about the word. The word says where 2 or 3 are gathered together in his name, he's right there in the midst. So revival can break out wherever.
Yeah.
Wherever you're calling on his name, and just open to the Spirit of God moving and have an open mind and open heart. He can move wherever, in whatever country, whatever state, whatever church, whatever school,
What I like about this is that it's student-led. And the only people that have been leading are students. And so I actually saw a social media post from a well-known worship leader who attended. And just the fact that they were a well-known worship leader didn't mean they ended up getting on the stage. And I don't know that they were necessarily looking to get on the stage. It was student-led and
they just
still
wanted to experience
to experience it, which, again, tourists, not tourists, have the time versus having a job. There's a lot to be said. But I'm thrilled that it's happening. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to sound negative or anything like that. I'm just, again, I'm really happy that it's student-led. I'm happy that it's spreading to other universities and college campuses and stuff. And
we need revival.
We do. And it's going to happen with the young people. And so if those young people can bring it to their church and it just continues spreading that way, I think is awesome.
And let it continue and not be something that dies out after 3 weeks.
Right.
But let there be a fire on the inside that just burns on through to eternity.
Right. And not something that's, what's the word for it?
Trendy.
Well, trendy, right? Something that's not trendy and something that's not made up. In other words, it's happening.
Fabricated.
Yeah, fabricated in your own church, trying to mimic what's happening, trying to kindle the fire yourself versus it actually being there. So I think it's great. I think it's exciting times in North America.
So we going next week?
Yeah, that's right. I book my flight and let's head down and see what's going on. Anyways, welcome to Between the Grooves. After all that, we are into episode 254, and this conversation we're going to have today is something I've been looking forward to for quite some time. We're chatting with David Leckie, and he is a concert festival promoter and all that happens. And, I'm a big fan of summer festivals. I know it's a big thing in the Christian community because it's an opportunity for people like you and I to go to a concert and see a whole bunch of bands at the same time when it's a multi-day event and whatnot. And he does that sort of thing. He does small stuff, big stuff, but I'm really interested in seeing what's all happening behind the scenes with these big concerts and stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've had the opportunity to get to know David over the years in ministry and in touring. And
is that how you met him in the first place?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I met him at, actually it was a showcase for festival owners. And I was the last act on the bill. And got a chance to meet him at probably close to midnight at this event. And we've been connected ever since. And just a solid guy, and I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to share today.
Well, let's get him on the line right now. David Leckie on Between the Grooves. Aisha speaks very highly of you, David.
Well, that's good to know. I'm glad I got a couple folks out there that like me anyway. That's good. But I think she's amazing too. We've had a wonderful relationship the last several years, and I'm glad to be on your program.
You know, my once in a while when I'm on the radio, because I do the morning show in Toronto, once in a while I'll get somebody saying, maybe it's a contest or whatever, somebody calling up and say, I listen to your show every morning. And my response is, great. That's awesome. Thank you so much. That makes you and my mom.
I get that. I totally get that.
Right. So, listen, you are, from what Aisha describes, a concert/festival promoter.
Yeah.
I guess first of all, how did you get into that game, and what do you do? Because it's got to be a big job.
It is, and it's one of the things I do. I'm also co-founder of a foundation that battles human trafficking, building homes called Freedom Ranch for girls 12 to 18, long-term recovery homes. But the festival, or the part of it, the concert festival, promoter side, agent, all of those things. About 15 years ago, I owned a trucking company and spent a lot of time on the road, and I just didn't feel like being away from home, family. It just really didn't feel like it was something I wanted to do long term. I got just really burned out on it, and so I thought to myself, what else can I do? And I had some experiences in construction and things like that, but I thought, I love music, and I love, it's just one of the things I'm just really passionate about. I wonder who promotes these shows. And I just started driving and thinking and, going down the road. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to promote concerts, maybe I'll do it with somebody I kind of like. So at the time, and I still do, I was a fan of David Phelps and the Gaither Vocal Band. So I thought, well, I'm going to look up and see who kind of works with David. So I looked it up, and I talked to this guy from Nashville called Jim Chafee. At the time was David's agent, and I said, I'm driving truck, and I just would really like an opportunity to maybe do some promotion or concert promotion. And he goes, well, do you know anything about it? And I said, no, I think I can do it though. And he says, wow. And so he invited me down to Nashville. We talked a little bit, and he said, I'm going to give you a shot. And so he gave me 3 concerts opportunities in Wisconsin, one over in Eau Claire, one in Green Bay, one in Milwaukee, and they went very well. And so I ended up getting a bunch of more David Phelps shows, and it just kind of grew over the years to where, I've been fortunate enough to work with like Newsboys and Michael W. Smith, Toby, and different people in the Christian field. And now we're kind of expanding into some country and blues and jazz here in the next couple of years. I got some opportunities that were just handed to me recently. So we're very thankful for it. And that's kind of how I got to get on the concert side and promotions, etc.
So how big and how small?
As far as
these concerts and festivals, like is it just a small church type thing, or is it, multi-day event with lots of bands coming in? Like what's your scope?
Yeah, thanks. It started off relatively small. I did a Meyer Theater in Green Bay, which is about 1,000 seats. One of my first concerts. I thought, well, I'm going to give it a shot. I had to kind of fit
small.
Just 1,000.
1,000 seats.
Well, I had the.
Well, hang on. 1,000 seats doesn't mean he filled 1,000 seats, right?
No,
that's true
like
too.
we had like 850, I think, the first night, and so it was a decent crowd.
That's great.
But so we started with in that 1,000-seat church range, 800,000 seat. You got to kind of fit the venue with the artist. Making sure it's not, you have a huge artist in 500 seats or a small one with 4,000 seats. And we've done a variety of things. I've worked with arenas. I've worked with theaters. I've worked with small churches as little as 300-400. I got, for example, David Phelps going to a small 450 seat church in New York in May. Normally he does larger venues, but to answer your question, we've worked with small and large venues over the years. Just depends on the artist.
Do you need a lot of capital to start one of these things? Like if you get hired to put on a concert or some sort of festival, is it your responsibility to come up with the cash?
Well, yes. You got deposits on artists. A lot of times, depending on the venue, you'll have a deposit for the venue. I think the main thing is if a person wants to get started in this, I would say step into it and try it. You don't have to do it on a large scale. Just see how you enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And work with artists are willing to work with you, especially, if it's a newer artist or maybe an artist that is looking to book some dates and so forth. On the finances side, if they know you're willing to go out there and hustle and try to sell some tickets or try to get some sponsors or whatever it takes to make the event work, they're willing to kind of work with you a little bit on the financial side and the payment structure and all of that. So I would never let the financial end of getting into this business dictate if a person's going to do it or not.
And are you limited geographically as well? Do you just stick with one state or states around where you are, or do you travel all over the place?
No, good question. We're doing a bunch of Corey Asbury dates right now, and we're throughout the Midwest. I'm working our way west right now a little bit. I haven't done an Alaska show yet. I haven't done Hawaii, things like that. But most of the
Hawaii, you got to do the Hawaii show, and I'm going to join you for that. Yeah.
Okay.
I got to get out. I got to get out there.
So do we all.
Gotta go.
Yeah.
Hey, I know a few people. Just saying.
Well, I think we better have a conversation then. I think.
Include me.
It would be.
I'll intro the artist to the stage or something. Like just make some excuse to have me there.
Oh man, let's do it. The three of us, let's go.
Okay.
But
that's good.
But yeah, it's not limited on geographic, and nobody is getting into this business. If you have an area that you want to promote and you feel strongly that you have connections there, then go do it.
We are on the verge of summer festivals, and in the Christian community, that's a big thing. That's where a lot of these artists, bigger artists, thrive on. That's a lot of their livelihood comes from these summer festivals, going
Sure.
week to week or weekend to weekend and whatever. I'm curious as to how the artists get booked and particularly the pecking order, kind of the ranking, because I'm sure every artist wants to be the headliner, but you can only have one headliner, and then you've got all these potentially these other acts that are maybe considered openers. I'm not sure if there's actually a term for that, but you might have one main guy that's their stage time is 7:00 at night, but all these other artists that were on before them.
Yes.
It is challenging at times when you're working with festivals to have that order in place. And, your agents, and you're talking about booking, it's through the booking agents themselves. Most artists have what's called a booking agent, and, the promoter goes through them, and then they reach out to the management for the artist, and it's kind of a little bit of a process with that. But that being said, that placing of the artist at festivals, if you have 6-8 a day, can be a little tricky. They want to know who's there. Who do you plan on bringing? Because they don't want to be placed in a spot that's maybe lower, or lower than somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody's just above them, and I get that. A lot of artists have a lot of years in, and they don't want to be placed with like a local worship band, and you bring in an artist that is maybe, I'm not going to name any names, but a mid-range artist.
Sure.
They don't want to be thrown in and then have like a local worship band right after them. So there's a lot to that, but it gets a little bit tricky, and you try to be respectful of that when you're putting the bands in order and so forth at the event. Like I just booked Jeremy Camp up at our festival for our foundation, Rising Hope. We just booked Jeremy. Well, obviously he's going to be our closer. So then before him, I got like Brandon Heath, Mark Schultz. Might bring in Blanco or another artist there, maybe Loving the Outcome. But I have to place them kind of in relevance to what they're doing currently out there, with sales.
When you're booking these artists, do you book the headliner first, or are all these artists or groups kind of hobbling around or all kind of vying for that spot all at the same time? Or do you book the openers first and then you've got something to go to with the headliner?
It's a great question. I try to book the headliner first when I can. This year was a little tough because there was just a bump across the board in the top 10 or 12, I noticed. I mean, artists. So without, getting into detail too much, I had a hard time booking our closer for the event this year. So we finally made something happen with Jeremy. And, but I like to get them booked first because it builds some excitement. Obviously, ticket sales can take off, things like that. You can go. I don't like to announce our festival before our closer's in place. Right. But it's going to get up and ticketed. We're moving to a new venue this year, which we're really excited about.
Right.
It's an amphitheater in Moorhead, Minnesota, called the Blue Stem, and so we just. But yes, we try to get their closers booked first every year. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Is part of that due to the budgeting?
Well, yeah, there is a budget, obviously, with artists that you'd like to stay with, especially on this festival in Fargo, because it is tied in with the foundation, and those dollars that we bring in for the children for human trafficking to recover are huge, important to me. So the budget is important, and obviously when the closers are costing more, then we're having to adjust everybody else that we're bringing in for the day, who we can bring in, the support and all of that.
What does your team look like? Like, is it a small team or a large team? What kind of a team does it take to put something like this on?
When we were at the old venue, it was basically a parking lot, and we had to build a city in a parking lot with stage and generators, bathrooms, and fencing, and all of that. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to make the change and move, is because this venue gives us the support we need as far as the parking, the behind the stage, the ushers, the ticket takers, all of those things that you need during the day. So we'll have limited volunteer needs this year, which and basically I don't have to bring in a stage and all of those things. They provide everything. So
that's wonderful.
I thought, for me, it frees up my time, and when I got other things I'm doing, whether it be the foundation or jail ministry or different things that we do, I just need that extra time, and it was just consuming too much time. And years ago, when I was talking with with Roberts and different people in Nashville about getting into the festival business, he said, "Don't do it, Dave. Your concerts are going great. Things are humming along." I said, "No, it can't be that much harder than just a regular concert." And he goes, "It's a lot harder." And you know what? He was right. It takes a lot of work.
Wow. You can often find David at a festival riding around on his golf cart, making sure everything is together.
Well, and hopefully that's all he has to do is ride around with the golf cart, because if he's off the golf cart, it means he's trying to put out a fire or fix something.
Right.
Well, praise God, we've had some good people. My wife really helps me run these events a lot, and we got a good team of people, whether it be on the production side or volunteer coordinator side or merch coordinator or whatever. We have a really good team of people that have been able to make that happen. I've just been a small part of just the booking and some of those types of things, really. So,
but there is a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes for these festivals. You mentioned, dealing with the volunteers. There's the security. There's the marketing. There's, if you've got vendors or sponsors, it's getting that all arranged, and then just the coordination, setup coordination, and you mentioned you have a team. Is it the same team you always use, the same people in the same roles?
It has been overall. We have made some changes in the festival because it's just the amount that's needed. Obviously, we've kind of condensed. Instead of going with like 60, 70 volunteers, we're only going to need about 10. So that just, obviously, that changes a lot, the dynamic, of the volunteers because of the venue.
The production team, I'm assuming that's probably a company that you've hired to handle all of that, whether it's the audio, the the setting up the main speakers if it's a venue where they don't have equipment there, setting up all the equipment, and then getting the people to run the equipment.
Yeah, on that issue, it's basically we send them over the technical, the riders for every artist,
right?
So that they can see the needs of the artist, the backline, the gear that they may need to be bringing in to fulfill that contract, and I just kind of leave it up to them at that point. I get them what they need, and they kind of run with it from there. I give them the times, that we are going to have the set times and the in between and turnover and everything, and they just kind of run with it. And years ago I was told that to focus on what you're good at and let people do their jobs and get out of the way, and that's kind of it's been good advice for me. I'm in a way I've always had a part of me where you want to be in control, that you feel like if you let go of something that you won't be able to control a situation or an event or whatever, and it's always cost me when I've had good people. And currently we got a lot of great people, a lot of good staff going on right now with the growth we're currently going through. And when somebody has a job, it's the reason why they have that job and why they're good at it. You just got to let them do it and not try to micromanage. And that's kind of one thing we've recently tried to do is just let people do their jobs.
Yeah, that's so good. And so many people need to hear that. I've got a question for you. How is it, what's the process for securing sponsors?
That's a great question. It's really one of the areas I feel like our company is really strong at. And a lot of times it's just developing relationships. Now, for the festival, it's been easy for me because, when with the nonprofit of Rising Hope attached, and people knowing that when they buy a ticket, when they sponsor something, it's all going into Rising Hope Foundation to pay the bills. But anything over and above that goes right into helping the kids. And so that part's easy. When you're talking about the for-profit side, that changes the dynamic because you don't have that nonprofit piece to be able to really push those sponsors. So you just really have to be able to show them what they can get for that, whether it be some tickets for their staff, whether it be rotating their logo at the event,
right?
Thank you from stage, radio spots that you tagged on at the end, paper, if you're doing billboards, where you have their logo on the billboards or posters. So we try to stagger that with the different levels in place. So whether it be a 500 sponsor or a 5,000 sponsor or something in between or more, high, whatever, they get, that staggered level they get for those sponsorships, they get extra pieces. So if that answers that at all.
Yeah, for sure. Now, something like this, are you planning 2 years in advance or a year in advance? How does that work?
Yeah, normally right after the festival, we start taking it, we take a look at it, see how it went, see what kind of changes we want to make. And the same with touring or concerts and so forth. We take a look at them after, take a look at, the numbers, obviously, how many people were there, the marketing, how did things go, what changes do we need to make. So you're constantly reviewing things because it's constantly changing out there.
Right.
It just really is. And I know somebody had mentioned earlier about the about the agents in the fields and booking and all of that, and everything's changing in this business. Especially, I noticed the last couple of years, there's been so many changes in Christian music.
It's got to be a big job just managing the contractual obligations. Like whether it be the riders on the artist side, but also on the vendor side, and you were mentioning the different levels and stuff. And even if it's, showing their logo between sets or having an onstage mention or whatever, all of that stuff has to be coordinated. It has to happen for them to be happy with what they got for what they paid.
Right.
Yeah, you got to be able to show, those pieces. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll take pictures, have a staff person take pictures of the business logo at the event. If you run a poster, you send it over when you do it. If you run a radio ad, you send that spot over. Just the confirmation thing. to make sure that those businesses are, know that they're getting what's been contracted with them.
One of the things I've seen that has grown in the last few years, without of course the pandemic having any impact on concerts and festivals, but one of the things I've noticed that has really grown in the last few years is the social media during the event, so that the marketing happening while the event is happening. Have you noticed that yourself as well?
Yeah, that's a big deal, that whole social media piece. And Facebook has changed some of the inside workings. Well, that's just Facebook. I don't want to pick on Facebook, but, that's just for one company. But they've changed it to where you can't even target specific artists anymore. And I'll just give one small example. And I know this maybe isn't exactly your question, but this is something that it's fresh with me because I'm working on it right now with some Corey Asbury shows. And I can't go in and target Corey Asbury in a 150, 200 mile radius around an event. They've cut out a lot. There's hardly any Christian artist anymore that you can put in there. I can't even put a Christian music or anything. They pulled all of those pieces out. So as crazy as it is, I got a guy that does this. He said, David, as crazy as it is, Switchfoot is in there. You want to target them? And I says, well, Switchfoot isn't Corey, but at least it's Christian music. I don't know why they left Switchfoot in there, but there's Michael W. Smith ain't in there. Toby's not in there. You can't target specific artists on Facebook anymore for a region when you're doing a Facebook boost and so forth. So it's gotten.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I got to jump in. Because the reason why Switchfoot might be in there is, if I recall correctly, because we had Switchfoot on the podcast a while back, and while the name of the group is Switchfoot is also a term that's used in surfing. So maybe that's the reason why you see Switchfoot. They're not the band Switchfoot, but the term. Right. But it's the term with surfing. Maybe that's the reason why Switchfoot is there and not Toby Mac or Corey Asbury or whoever else.
Yeah,
I'm just guessing.
I'll have to look at that. Maybe my guy didn't catch that. I'll have to talk to him later. Thanks for sharing.
Well, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm.
Yeah.
So at this big event that you have, and if I'm correct, the Thrive Fest North is one of the bigger festivals that you manage, correct?
Yeah, it's our biggest event for Rising Hope Foundation. It's our biggest fundraising event for the nonprofit. Yes.
So how many people during that event will you have running around being photographers or videographers specifically for social media?
Yeah, we try to limit that. I have one lady in Grand Forks, up there in North Dakota, that's been doing photography for me for several years, Yvonne Jones, and I trust her, backstage and around the front and different things, and so I try to stick with the same. We don't do video every year. I do have a guy in Texas that comes up and does it maybe every other year for me, just if we want updated video, up on the web page or whatever, but we limit some of that. I just take a look at it and go, is it worth the extra cost? If I already have footage from the event in the past with major artists, I don't feel like I need to add a lot to that. Now with this new venue this year, we're probably going to be bringing in, more of that because we're switching venues. So we're going to need that backdrop, if you will, that's going to change. But we limit that quite a bit, though, because there's so much activity already going on, from the front of the stage back with artists going in and out and, staff and security. And we really limit the amount of people that have exposure, or try to anyway.
I guess the thing with social media is it's social. And so if you have a sponsor, and I can use the example like a radio station because I work for a radio station, and the radio station is there and they're backstage because they have some stage time or they're interviewing artists or whatever. I mean, there's a mutual relationship there where they could be displaying on their social media some backstage moments that could be shared by you as well.
It's a big thing. That partnerships with radio has on the promotion side and relationship side, besides the spots and everything that the radio station can bring to the event, that long relationship. We work with, I think this year we'll have about 9 Christian radio stations throughout North Dakota and Minnesota, and then possibly Winnipeg again this year. But we work with, great. A lot of Christian stations. Now, with the foundation being involved on the nonprofit side, I'm only charged 2 of the 9 stations charge me at all, because they really walk with us on wanting to get these homes for children. So that's obviously different than when we do the for-profit shows through Thrive Productions Group. Everything changes there. We don't get that free situation that we get with the foundation, but I'm thankful that they realize the worth of doing something and helping these kids. So but
what's free? What's free then? I mean, it could be a trade-off, right? Where they're doing commercials or spots for you, but because they're doing that for you, you're giving them a spot at the festival or advertisement, or you're paying for their food and accommodations while they're physically there. If it's a radio station's out of town, as an example, and you're also perhaps giving them opportunities to interview these artists, which is content for their radio station, but also promotes the artist.
There are some trades, but I got to tell you, I have 4 or 5 stations that want nothing. They run the spots. I got a station in Bismarck, North Dakota, and one up in Minot, one in International Falls, one in St. Cloud. They don't really want anything as far as tickets. I mean, I offer it, and they say, if we can make it, we'll give you a call. But they'll run the spots because they just like our foundation so much of what we're doing. They want to be able to help the event.
That's awesome.
I'm a little jealous right now because I'm in Toronto, Canada, and we don't get lots of concerts. Like, there is no summer festival. There used to be something, and they shut down like a year before the pandemic. Anything that happens as far as a festival is out of town. Like, it's going south into the U.S. versus anything that travels across Canada. Now, there is, across Canada events, but they're a lot smaller. They're usually in church environments. They're not, multi-day events with multiple artists very often.
Right.
So I'm kind of jealous right now.
Why do you think that is? Just turning it around a little bit, why do you think, Toronto, Winnipeg, Montreal, whatever, Vancouver, why do you think some of the bigger Canadian cities haven't done much for larger Christian festivals?
Well, I know one of the major reasons is because of the border. So a lot of, any of the A-list artists, any of these big artists that you want to bring in have to get across the border with all their gear, with them personally. I know of one band that tried to come up twice for a concert, and they had to cancel the concert because one of the artists in this band had, some driving conviction 10 years ago, speeding or parking in the wrong place or whatever else, and because it was on his record, they wouldn't let them in. So there's all of those.
Oh, my goodness.
The logistics, just getting them into Canada, I think, is a big deal.
I think with a festival where I think it may work, is you can do the fly-in thing, but obviously they still have to have the passport and everything to be able to work. Yeah. But I think, you're going to get 70-80% of the bands that, 4 or 5 guys are all going to be able to have passports, or they already do because they travel a lot, already. Mexico or wherever they're doing, even family stuff. People need passports now all the time. So I just wonder if a festival or a community like in Canada, like your area that you're in, could get some churches together to host a festival, even if one of the properties has a larger piece of land.
Yeah,
you have to bring in.
Do you hear what's happening?
Yeah, I hear what's happening.
Do you hear what's happening? So, that's all I'm saying.
And I'm not making excuses or anything like that. But the border was one part. Getting into Canada for the bigger artists, and then the other part is. In the U.S., you've got a lot of cities where artists can travel from city to city fairly easily. But in Canada, your big, population hubs are very far and spread apart. You're driving 2 days before you get to the next big city that makes it worth your while to do a concert. Now, if it's smaller scale, then yeah, you can travel into different cities that are an hour, 2 hours away, if it's like a church type environment. But for a big festival, it makes sense for a lot of the artists in the States to plan their summer where they're going to a different place every time, because they can go with all their gear, they can go with all the trucks, and or maybe they're flying in, but it's a lot closer.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes there's a festival up in, I think it's Alberta, because I know a few years ago I had Zach Williams, and that's another funny story. Well, it wasn't so funny for Zach, but but it was right when Zach was taking off, and I booked him like a year out. And I'm getting off the topic a little bit, but I'll share. And so we booked him for like $3,000. And when Zach was taken off, on that first album, and he started to really crank it, by the time he got there, he was getting like 25,000 a show. And he got there for like $3,000. I booked him a year out when he was just starting. So he was there, and I was thinking to myself the whole time, is he going to be frustrated with me? And I thought, he was such a professional, such a great guy. And just, Zach is just unbelievable. And so, we kidded about it in the backstage a little bit. And I says, I said, man, we got you right on this one. And he goes, man, I'm telling you, you sure did. And so, how Zach can do it. And so we were just visiting, and now, Zach's 40, 50,000 a date, and it's just unbelievably doing well, and I'm so happy for him. But I know that he was coming out of a Canadian show, and I thought it was Alberta in August, and I'll have to look it up if they still have that show up there or not. And then he did Fargo, and then he worked his way back to Nashville. But
I'm familiar with the one in Alberta. And that's a once-a-year thing. There's nothing else around Alberta as far as other, festivals for an artist to travel now, 3 hours away to this other city, because it's just the cities are so far spread apart. And I'm not making excuses, because there's always a way to do something like that. I will say this.
How far is Alberta from you?
To drive?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe 3 days? It would it would take me 24 hours just to get out of Ontario. Everything's pretty far spread apart. But
spread out.
Going back to what you were saying, David, about Zach Williams, for anybody that's listening to this show that is not familiar with the money involved, I guess, to say it politely, $3,000 is great to bring in an artist. And the fact that an artist might be charging $12,000 or $15,000 or $20,000, you can't look at that and think that all of that money is going to the artist, I guess is what I'm saying, because it's not. Yeah. There's a huge expense for all the personnel that travel with the person, the tech guys, the musicians, the other singers, or whatever else that are with them. Like, it's a big production, and that's what you're paying for. So just taking a step back so people don't think, wow, Zach Williams makes $20,000 a show. No. He'd like that, but it's not happening.
No, it's very true. There's a lot of pieces in place. There's agencies that get some cuts along the way, and then as the artist grows,
management,
there's just more production involved. There's just as you grow, there's more cost. So you're absolutely right. And then they got the band to pay. There's just multiple hands and pieces that go in on that revenue. So you're absolutely right on that.
Sometimes it's interesting when you go, and the average person wouldn't necessarily see this, but if you're backstage, as an example, for like a Zach Williams or one of these other big acts, and I don't like using the word act, but one of these big acts, you look at how many trucks are rolling in for them personally. If it's, two big 18-wheeler trucks, that there's a lot of gear, there's a lot of lighting or sound equipment or instruments or I'll say costume changes, but whatever they're wearing, like all of that stuff. And it's not just for Zach, but it's everybody in his band.
Yeah, there's a lot. The production is huge, depending on the venue and exactly what you're doing. If it can be a little smaller if you're doing some church dates. Run, and they got really good in-house production. You don't have the needs you would have, but if you're rolling out there, you're doing arenas, theaters, and whatever, and multiple dates. Every venue is different as far as what's going to be required when you walk into a venue for production as well. So And they have staff just on touring and big touring. They have staff that just takes care of the technical side of things, the production side.
Right.
You're not, and then you have the venue to have to pay for, and all of the staff at the venue, and there's a lot of pieces in play.
Yeah, for sure. About, I guess it would have been about 10, 15 years ago, I tried to hire Bryan Adams.
Oh, wow.
I was trying to get him for my wedding anniversary. So the first dance at my wedding was Everything I Do It For You, which is one of his songs. I don't know if that's the actual title or whatever, but those are the words. Those are the lyrics to the chorus. And so I was going to try to get him to come into town just to sing that song. And I was willing to pay thousands of dollars just for him to come, but he was busy touring at the time. So just thought I'd throw that little story in there.
So you were doing a little promoting of yourself,
I tried. It wasn't very successful. I got through to the label or I got through to the booking people, but I was turned down. I was shot right down. I was actually what I was wanting to do was to get him to. I was going to try to get him to show up at my church. And he's a secular mainstream artist versus a Christian artist, but I was going to try to get him to show up at my church on a Sunday morning. And, during the announcements, he would just come out starting to sing the song. I was going to come out singing the song. And while I'm singing to my wife for our wedding anniversary, he was going to come out and take over. And I thought that would be a great, great thing for my wife. But it never worked out.
That's amazing. I was just sitting here thinking to myself, I don't know all the words to the song, but
can you sing it for us right now? Or?
I have not in this lifetime. We do have a singer. We do have a singer online here, but I was thinking to myself, the words in that song could be related spiritually as well, couldn't they?
Yeah, and that's the reason why I thought I could get away with it. So if I'm up on the stage, I'm singing this song, and it's just a track or whatever, and then he just starts walking out and takes over. You'd have people in the congregation with their hands up in the air praising God, right?
Aisha, that may be a new song for you, the Bryan Adams song.
I'm telling you.
Here we go.
Oh, my.
You're supposed to jump in.
No. Who, me or David?
Yeah, you.
No, I'm supposed to start the song and then you finish off, but it's too late. And I'm not paying you the $3,000 or whatever I was willing to pay Bryan Adams. So we're a little off topic here, aren't we?
That's funny.
That's all good. It's all good.
So we've talked a lot about festivals and all the different roles and responsibilities that happen with concerts and festivals and whatnot. Can you tell us a little bit about Rising Hope specifically?
Oh, I'd love to. It's a passion to me. It's what drives my life. I just want to be able to be a part of a team that leaves something when I'm gone from here that can be carried on by others. I saw it firsthand. Difficult situation for years trucking, and when I saw it happening in the trucking, somebody come in with kids or whatever, young kids, sometimes 15 less, whatever, I'd shoo them off, call the police, do whatever I could do, but it just burned in me. And so when I started concert promotion and met Natalie Grant and different people that were involved in human trafficking causes and so forth, and had conversations, I thought, okay, Lord, what can I do? And I found that one of the biggest needs was long-term recovery for children. And so that have been trafficked for years, maybe kidnapped at 3 and now they're 15, if you can imagine what that would look like, or whether they ran away at 13 and now are 16 and just they left because their house situation wasn't good, or they just figured it was better somewhere else, or however they got there. It really don't matter, and I'm not the judge. But it just felt like, what can we do? Because short term is not, it helps, but it's not the answer. And sometimes they go back into the situation and it's worse and more violent than it was to begin with. So long term for me was definitely the way to go, recovery. And with the Freedom Ranch, it's named that way because we use equine therapy. We'll be putting that in place along with other things, and regular therapy and home in-house schooling and so forth. and giving the kids a chance to get out of that situation and just heal and be able to share God's love, because it is a Christian nonprofit. We'll be able to have the gospel presented. And so we're obviously excited about Rising Hope and the direction it's going. There have just been amazing things that have happened recently with Rising Hope, and the opportunities to build additional facilities is really coming strong. And we want to kind of have this as a framework, so we can start with the upper Midwest with locations up here and then kind of grow, in the years to come. And so I just feel like it's just one of the world's worst atrocities is the abuse and treatment of children through human trafficking. And there's just, I don't know how else to put it other than then it's just time to be able to make a change. Sometimes when I've talked to people about human trafficking, they don't believe it's in their neighborhood. It's really all over the United States. Any given night, there's well over 300,000 children under the age of 18 that are being trafficked. And that's just too many. So it's just time that, good people stand up and do something to make a difference in these children's lives and give them an opportunity to have a home, a safe place to live, and to be able to, have a life. And obviously, as we know, the best way is through Jesus. And so we want to be able to present the gospel freely, and it's up to them to accept it, nothing forced. But sometimes you just have to present it, plant the seed.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
So that's Rising Hope to me, anyway.
David, thanks so much for hanging with Aisha and I. I really, really enjoyed that conversation.
Let's bring a show to Toronto.
I think it's a great idea.
We need to make it happen, seriously.
No, Aisha, we could have kept talking for a lot longer.
I know.
This guy is so knowledgeable, but he's so deep and so such a genuine, authentic guy.
He's gentle.
Yeah.
He's a gentle spirit, and it's evident, and he's very passionate about what he does.
Oh yeah. Just giving him that forum to talk about Christian nonprofits, specifically what he's doing with Rising Hope. I mean, I didn't say anything while he was talking, and he was talking for quite a bit, telling us about why it's so important to him. So, David Leckie on Between the Grooves, and it's now time to check out some artist advice. Today we hear from Kim Pratt.
Make sure you're called to do it, because it's a lot. It's a lot that you're going to encounter. And if you don't have that foundation to know that God called you in that area, you could easily get turned off. So make sure you're called.
Simply stated.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're called to it. And it comes back to purpose for me, Know why you're here, and know that God called you on purpose and for a purpose. And it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah, if you're not
Make
called,
sure you're called to it.
If you're not called, you're wasting a lot of time.
Sure
When
are.
you think about it, because you're really spinning your wheels, not achieving anything.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Kim Pratt, our artist advice this week on Between the Grooves. Many thanks to David Leckie for joining us on this episode. And make sure you check us out wherever you get your podcasts, because we've got many, many other episodes for you to listen to. And make sure you subscribe. Give us a comment or two. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like us and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Do it, do it, do it.
Thanks for listening to Faith Strong Today's Between the Grooves podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider sharing it with your friends, rating our podcast, or giving us some love on your socials to your amazing friends and followers will only help us reach more people. We'd also love to hear from you and share your feedback in an upcoming episode. Send your video or written message to Aisha and James on Facebook and Twitter @Between Grooves, or email us anytime, hello@faithstrongtoday.com.